please enter it in the chat, but we are going to get started in just a few seconds. Christy, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that you could join us here for a webinar on positive behavior intervention and support, different strategies for challenging behaviors for home, since so many of us are working in the home environment now, whether it be with our families, our individual families, or the families that we're working with. So this is sure to be a great topic for that will hit home for anyone. So this presentation is being hosted by the Delaware County Local Interagency Coordinating Council, which is the LICC for short. For those of you who are not familiar with the LICC and what we do, I just wanted to give you a brief overview. It is a partnership amongst families, EI agencies, the Early Learning Resource Center, and many other community groups that provide services and resources to young children birth through age 5. Those children could have a developmental delay or not. So it's for any children within Delaware County with a from birth to age 5. So my role, and again, I'm sorry, my name is Christy Fournier, and I work for the Delaware County Office of Early Intervention, and I am the EI coordinator for the infant toddler program. I am also the co-chair for the LICC in Delaware County. So if you have any questions, my information will be posted at the end. If you have any questions about LICC, any of the information that was presented today, or early intervention specific questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I will get back to you with any answers that I can help you with. So without further ado, we will get started. I'm going to pass it over to Danielle, who will give you more information and present our training today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Christy. So welcome, everybody. I'm excited. This is my first live webinar, so I hope it goes well. I just wanted to let you know, for those of you that this is your first webinar, you do not have those video and audio features. I'm going to talk about that. I know when I first went into a webinar and I'm like, why can't I see myself? That is why, okay? I do have some panelists. You guys can wave. In addition to Christy, we have Niquetta and Brianna. They are on to help us with our Q&A features. So without further ado, we're going to get started. So if I can move my slides, here we go. Some ground rules. Like I said, you guys don't have those audio or video capabilities, but please type some questions in the Q&A. You have access to the Q&A and the chat box. We will have 2 opportunities when our moderators will be able to provide me with questions. Okay, they can also provide you resources or links directly in the chat or Q&A. Okay, so please type those questions. They are here to help and kind of moderate that part of the webinar. Your name will be shown in the Q&A unless you make it anonymous. That's okay too, okay? Also, just don't use any identifying information about your child. We can provide strategies and resources, but we just want to keep everybody's child and information confidential, okay? And then this is a safe space, no judgment. We are all doing our best. This is kind of unprecedented times right now, and everyone is feeling a little bit of stress. So this is a stress-free, judgment-free zone. Ask whatever questions you want. We are here to help you guys, okay? So I'm gonna share a little bit about myself before we get started. So there's my professional picture. I work for Easterseals of Southeastern Pennsylvania. I'm a behavior analyst and the current director of our behavioral supports department. Before I started working for Easterseals, I was an educator. I taught special education, worked in early intervention, and specifically kiddos with autism for over 10 years. I then kind of switched directions a little bit in the field and provided some direct behavioral support, ABA supports for children with autism. And now I'm a behavior analyst. So here I am today. I want to share a kind of another part of my life with you guys. I'm also a parent. That's actually from yesterday. Yesterday was my son's 6th birthday. He's a little cutie. He's got his quarantine hair going. Haven't had a haircut in quite some time. There he is. And I have a little munchkin who is 8 months old. So I have my professional background and I have my parenting experiences that I hope to share with you guys today when we talk a little bit about supports for home and how you can kind of create some environments that are conducive to positive behavior. Okay, so there we are. Some National Center resources. Again, if you guys want these, we can link them in the Q&A. A lot of the material I'm going to review with you today was taken from the Center on the Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning, or CEFL. They do have parent modules, which I took a lot of the information I'm going to share with you today from. They have a lot of other great resources on that website. Another great national resource kind of a storehouse is NCPMI, the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. The general link is there. We can always link those in the Q&A or chat for you guys as well. All right, here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about building relationships using the 5-to-1 ratio, the power of play, encouraging positive behavior in the home, and establishing routines. I want to start with a little bit about what is PBIS. This might be a new concept or topic for some of you. So PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Intervention and Support. And in a nutshell, it is a positive approach to behavioral interventions. We try to take the most proactive and positive approach. We focus a lot on prevention. How can we set up the environment? How can we build relationships with our kiddos, whether that be our kiddos that we have biologically or at home, or the children that we work with? How can we build relationships with them and set up environments that are conducive to positive behavior? So a lot of our strategies are preventative. So we're going to talk a lot about some of these basic PBIS strategies that can be used at home, right? Because a lot of us, all of us, right, are stuck at home. But for those of us that have kids, it brings a whole nother dimension to what this quarantine means, right? And even for me, I'm a mom, I'm a specialist, but it's still hard, right? So we're just going to talk about some strategies and interventions that might be helpful to utilize while we're at home. Also, if I'm talking about a topic and you have a strategy that has worked for you as well, that might also be helpful information to put in the chat box, right? Just to share as much strategies as we can with each other. It can be really helpful during this time. So, I have a quote up here. It says, every child needs one person who is crazy about them. So I want you to take a second and just think about someone that was crazy about you as a kid. Okay, someone that you had a really special, nurturing relationship with. My person was my grandma. She was so loving. She was so open. She passed away almost 10 years ago. But I remember even when I was in my 20s and I would see her, I would like hop on her lap and give her a hug, right? She was not judgmental. She would listen to me and she would give me advice. She would tell me how it is sometimes, but she always did it in a way that never made me feel judged, right? It never made me have an icky feeling. I always felt really nurtured and comforted and supported, right? So as parents and caregivers, we hope to be that person for our kid, right? We hope to be that one that they feel safe with, right? So how do we do that, right? It's not always automatic, right? And if it's not our kid, if you guys are on this webinar and you are a therapist or a teacher, right? You also want to think about how do we build these types of nurturing relationships with the kids we're supporting. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to do that. So the biggest strategy for building relationships is using the 5-to-1 ratio. See, we want to have 5 positive interactions with a child for every 1 negative interaction. And I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit. Okay, so this 5-to-1 ratio actually came from marriage research. Dr. John Gottman was doing marriage research, and he was calculating positive and negative interactions in married couples, and he could predict divorce with remarkable accuracy. The 5-to-1 ratio was the ratio that he concluded that was associated with really stable, happy marriages. Marriages that had a 0.8-to-1 ratio, so more negative than positive, were marriages that he could predict within a 5-year span ended in divorce. So that's where PBIS adopts this 5-to-1 ratio. So what does this mean? For some, it might seem like a really hard thing to do, especially if you're redirecting your student, your child, many times throughout a day, right? Because that negative interaction might be just like a correction, right? Maybe you gave a direction and they didn't listen, so you have to tell them again, right? Excuse me. So if you are redirecting or correcting your child 5 times, right, in an hour, right, times that by 5, right? That's how many positive interactions you would have to do to kind of balance that out. So sometimes that seems hard, right? How can I possibly have 5 times more positive interactions? So the way I like to frame this is with this piggy bank analogy. So think about it. All of us, kids and adults, have this piggy bank, right? If you've ever heard of bucket fillers, this is a really similar concept, right? So everybody has a piggy bank, right? And the way we fill kids' banks are with positive interactions, okay? So anything could be a positive interaction, right? So saying, "Good morning, I'm so happy to see you." That's a coin in the piggy bank, right? A pat on the back, a hug, a kiss if you're a parent. That's another, money in the bank, right? Preferred activities. Now, every parent and family has different ideas on screen time. I let my son watch a preferred show in the morning. That's filled his bank a little bit in the morning, right? Letting him have a preferred breakfast, filling his bank, right? So positive interactions, preferred activities, fill our kiddos' banks, right? We're going to talk a lot about positive reinforcement, okay? Acknowledging what a kid's doing right fills their bank. So when my son gets up in the morning, he uses the bathroom, he washes his hands, I say, "Oh, buddy, I love how you washed your hands right after you went to the bathroom." That's filling his bank, right? It's positive reinforcement, positive acknowledgement of what he's doing. So at Easterseals, I do a lot of staff training on this. And I always say, the positive interactions are just what we do all day, every day. We're constantly trying to fill our kids' banks. And the reason we do this is to build relationships, but it's also to maintain this 5-to-1 ratio. Because when we have to redirect or correct, we're taking money out of the bank, right? So if we don't spend time and energy and effort filling that bank, when we start taking money out, what's going to happen when the bank's empty, right? So think about us, because this applies to adults too, right? We have our piggy banks. We have to fill our banks. Now, I have to say, being home and quarantined, I've struggled a little bit with filling my own bank. So some things that I do, I'm a bath person. I know it's weird, but I like taking baths. So when I get to have that time in the bathroom, that's filling my bank. That's putting money in my bank. Okay. If I get to watch a preferred show, if the kids go to sleep and I actually get to watch Netflix, that's money in the bank. Okay. A positive interaction with my son, right? Him just coming over and giving me a hug, money in the bank, right? All these things, getting a good night's sleep, money in the bank. If I get to do yoga, bonus, money in the bank, right? If I don't do all those things that fill my bank, when I start having withdrawals taken from my bank, which happens a lot, right? A meeting gets scheduled right when my kid's supposed to be in his Zoom conference. Withdrawal. Baby is crying upstairs. I can hear her during a meeting, right? Withdrawal. If all I have is withdrawals, money coming out of my bank, what happens? We get burnout, right? We get run down, okay? So we have to take care of ourselves by filling our banks, right? But we also have to take care of our kids by filling their banks. Because if all we're doing is redirecting, correcting, yelling at them, and they don't have that balance of positive interactions, they're going to get stressed out too. They're going to get burned out too. So a great strategy for building positive relationships and filling our kids' banks is to get in a habit of positive interactions, right? And keeping track of it. You know, you could even do tallies. Okay, like how many times am I actually, having positive interactions with my kid? Like I have, a whiteboard, so I could like tally it on that. Or if I just feel like today was a rough day and I was yelling a lot, and I say this, I admit, I yell at my kids sometimes, right? And I don't mean to, and I don't want to, right? Like I train in PBIS, but it's stressful, right? Like it's life. It's the reality of what's going on right now. But I recognize if we've had a rough day, and maybe I've raised my voice, I know when to. I do apologize a lot. I tell him I'm sorry, and that might fill his little bank a little bit, right? To recognize that mommy makes mistakes, but she can apologize, right? But then I try to spend extra quality time with him, right? Maybe I read him an extra story at night, right? That time, that one-on-one time, fills their banks, right? So build their banks back up, because nobody's perfect. All we're doing is trying our best, right? All right. Here are some ways to give encouragement, just some samples. If you're kind of grasping of, well, how can I do this? How can I use positive praise and positive language? Here are just some examples you can do. Thank you for whatever. What a good problem solver. You were able to figure out how to mute your Zoom conference, right? Oh, it's so much fun to play with you. You're so good at sharing. That's one lesson my son is learning the hard way. The baby, yes, while she's only 8 months, she likes to take his toys, right? So we're really working on sharing and giving them that positive feedback for the behaviors, the positive behaviors that we want them to see. Talking about kindness. You were so kind when baby was crying and you went over and you held her little hand, right? Fills their bucket. Or thank you for using your inside voice when your sister is sleeping. I didn't even write that one. And that is so exactly what happens in my house, right? We're going to talk about rules. One of our rules is be quiet when the baby is sleeping, right? So making sure that if that's the rule or the expectation that I'm going to set, that I'm going to follow that up with some positive feedback when he does display that behavior based on the rule that I set, right? So things to try at home to make this connection. Here are just a few tips. Try to refill or fill up your child's piggy bank, okay? Try to use those positive comments and encouragement with your child. Have fun. Filling their banks, guys, can just be about playing, and we're going to talk about that next. It can be having fun. So we're going to talk about the power of play, following your child's lead. Now, no matter how old they are, right, you might have people on this call with children from 0 to 5. So even itty bitty babies, okay, my 8-month-old, okay, I try to follow her lead. I play with her, and some people are like, what does that mean? Because play doesn't always come naturally to adults who haven't been in the early childhood field, right? For people that have been in the field, it might be like, oh yeah, we just get down and we play, but it's not always something natural. Like, I've been teaching this to my husband. What does it mean to play with an 8-month-old, right? We have balloons all over my house because it was my son's birthday yesterday. So I noticed, right, you have to observe sometimes, that she was going after the balloons that were on the floor. So I just started bouncing the balloon, and she was so happy. She was laughing and smiling, and then I would knock the balloon a little bit away from her, and she's learning to crawl. She's kind of crawling. She's kind of got it. She'll go a little close, and then I'll bounce the balloon, right? And it's that engagement, right? It's seeing what they like, observing, and then just engaging with them with things that they like to do. Follow their lead. This little cutie on the screen, maybe they like beads. Beads are a fun toy for kiddos, right? You can shake them, you can wear them, you can spin them around. Follow your kids' lead. See what they like and engage with them. Here are some tips for some powerful parenting practices for play. So we talked about following your kid's lead. Just wait, watch, and then join. Talk about what your kid is doing. So I have a hard time not telling my kid what to do, right? There's a difference between talking about what they're doing and telling them what to do. So we want to just talk. So with my baby, with my 8-month-old and the balloon, I was just narrating what we were doing. Oh, look at the balloon. It's going up and down. Oh, I'm going to get the green balloon. Now, she has no idea about her colors at this age, right? But that's okay. Depending on where your child is developmentally, you can still label colors and shapes and actions. You're just giving them simple language, and you're just modeling what that looks like, no matter where they're at. So talk about what they're doing. Sometimes before you even jump in to join, you can just talk about what they're doing. My son, if you can see my basement, he loves superheroes, and there are superheroes everywhere. And I don't have any idea what these guys are, right? So I'll just ask him, I'm like, oh, that guy looks cool. Like, he has wings. And it'll start the conversation with him about his superheroes. Now we have to be careful, because sometimes asking a question, even if it's about what they're doing, some kids could perceive as a demand, right? So if I come into my son and I say, oh, well, what superpowers does Batman have? It might seem like I'm just trying to engage him, but it might actually be a demand, right? So I also have to be careful with just narrating and labeling things that I see versus telling him or asking him a question. We also want to encourage our kids' creativity. That's tip 3. So pretend play is super important. So let them, even if they're not playing with the toys necessarily in the right way, that might be okay, right? We don't want to reinforce necessarily repetitive behaviors, but if my son is playing with his superheroes, and right now he has them like on his train table, is that necessarily what the train table is for? Not really, but he has a play scheme, right? So I'm going to encourage him to elaborate on that play scheme and not get too particular with how I want him to play with the toy. So encourage your kids' creativity, okay? Watch for cues. Sometimes my son, because he's 6, it's hard, weird saying that, he just turned 6 yesterday, but he's 6, and he was an only child for the first 5 years of his life. So he, played a lot by himself. He has pretty good imagination. So sometimes when I want to engage with him, it's hard because he can just play by himself for hours. So I will watch for cues. That maybe he's getting bored, or maybe he's looking over at me if I'm doing work. Just cues that maybe he does want me to engage with him. Tip 5 is to avoid power struggles. Now, this is something that I train a lot on at Easterseals, how to avoid a power struggle. Because you shouldn't be arguing with little people because we're adults, right? But sometimes it happens. Trust me, I know. So how do we avoid that? A power struggle can be really clear in a couple of ways. So when we talk about like, what is a power struggle? So if I say, okay, it's time to turn off your iPad, which I'm sure is a battle for a lot of people nowadays. And my son says no. And I say, it's time to turn off your iPad. He says no. Or shakes his head no, right? It's that back and forth. I said do this, right? The adult says that. And the kid says, I'm not doing that, right? It becomes this power struggle. How do we avoid that? We're going to talk a little bit about schedules, routines, and setting rules. That will help, right? And we're also going to talk about choices. So with my son, we use a timer for some of his harder transitions, right? I'll say, okay, 1 more minute, and iPad's going to be done. So I'm giving him some warning ahead of time, okay? And I'm also going to make sure that I have the next choice for what we're doing next, especially if we're talking about play and they're doing something preferred and we have to end it, right? We have to make sure that we have something on the back end of what's going to get them to get over that hurdle of, I don't want to stop doing this, right? So try to avoid those power struggles. Structure your transitions. Have an activity. Maybe it's not as preferred, but it's still what's happening next, ready to go, right? So that you can re-engage them and there's not this lag or delay where you might see some challenging behavior. And tip 6, have fun, right? Try to do things that you guys both enjoy. If you can get outside, it's going to be nice, I think, the next couple of days, maybe until Friday. Have fun. Run around, do things, engage in play that's preferred for both of you guys, okay? But have fun. Again, these are all ways that you're going to build that positive relationship with your child. Okay, I have some time scheduled now for a Q&A break. So, Brianna or Niquetta, are there any questions related to what we were talking about that was shared in the Q&A, or any questions that you guys have on the topics?
What are other ways to provide positive reinforcement by providing praise to fill their piggy banks during the day?
So that's a good question. So positive reinforcement is really important. And the only type of positive reinforcement we talked about was praise, right? So when you say, oh, good job cleaning up your toys, or I love the way that you gave me your iPad. Now that's one form of positive reinforcement. There are many different types of positive reinforcement. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the next half of the presentation. But positive reinforcement, the definition is something that is presented following a behavior that increases the likelihood of that behavior occurring more, right? So we want to reinforce positive behaviors so we see more positive behaviors. But if our praise isn't reinforcing, what do we do? sometimes we have to identify like external or other things that are reinforcing, right? So maybe your child likes music, right? Maybe you can play a song, right? Clean up your toys and then we're gonna play a Frozen song. My son was singing that like one hook from Frozen all day today. But maybe a song can be the reinforcement. Maybe you can use a preferred game, right? Maybe, I mean, we're home, right? Can we play 5 minutes of hide and seek as a transition, right? Can we just, with a little one, do row, row, row your boat, right? And just sing and get their hands, row, row, row your boat, as a reinforcement for what they just did, right? So there's a variety of different types of ways we can reinforce kids. There can be a tangible object, it can be an activity, or it can be social. My son, I love him to death, but he sometimes doesn't want like the over-the-top mom praise that I give him. He kind of wants me to chill a little bit. So instead of like, oh, great job, buddy, I'll just throw him a thumbs up and smile, right? All of those different types of positive reinforcement will fill our kiddos' banks. Did I answer your question? I hope so. Are there any other questions related to what we just talked about? Okay, we're gonna move on. Keep those questions coming, put them in the Q&A as we go through. All right, so the next thing we're gonna talk about is how do we encourage positive behavior by using positive language? And in PBIS, we have a phrase that says, tell them what to do instead, okay? So instead of calling out what they're doing wrong, we wanna focus on what they're doing right, okay? So here are some common ways that we might use language that is negative, right? Or not even necessarily negative, but calling out what they're doing wrong. Okay, we might say no hitting or stop yelling, no running, no crying. So instead of using that sort of language, what can we do instead? We can use positive language, right? So if a kiddo, like in the school buildings, is running, we say use your walking feet, right? For a couple of reasons. If we say no running for a kiddo running down the hallway, they just got our attention for the challenging behavior, right? Sometimes kids seek adult attention and they don't care if it's negative or positive. They just want a reaction, right? So we don't want to give attention directly to the thing they're doing wrong, right? But also because if we say no running, that kid might skip, hop, crawl down the hallway, right? We didn't say to walk, we just said stop running. So we use the terms walking feet. So if we see a kiddo running, we, oh, remember, use your walking feet in the hallway. Stop yelling. That's a big one around the house. We want to promote using inside voices. Another way to do this is with a voice volume chart. If you guys are interested, that might be something that Brianna and Nikita could pull for you guys. I use it at home. I showed the visual to my son once, but I use the language a lot. It's like a cat, a mouse, and a lion. So if he starts yelling, like, oh, is that a lion or a cat? Because our cat is our inside voice. So now he knows, like if he yells, I say, oh, where's your cat voice, right? It's a lot, it's more positive than saying stop yelling, right? It's a fun way to teach those appropriate voice volumes. Hands to self. There's a lot of different ways to say this. And depending on what sort of, if your kiddo is enrolled in a program or childcare, what they use. But instead of saying no hitting, you just say, like, you can say, keep your hands by your side, keep your hands to yourself, put your hands in your lap. You can even give them an incompatible, like, oh, clap your hands or put your hands on your head, right? We want to tell them specifically what to do with their hands, not put attention on what they're doing inappropriately. I'm kidding. And then the last one is no crying. So sometimes if our kids are crying, maybe they just need a hug, right? But sometimes kids cry like in the midst of maybe a challenging behavior. But we don't want to say no crying. If they have vocal language or they can show you what they want, maybe you can say, tell me or show me. If they use an augmentative communication system, maybe you can have pictures available or their device available and say, tell me, show me what you want, right? But sometimes kids just need a little consoling, and that's okay too. Or maybe we don't have to say anything. Or maybe if we want to talk about voice fine, if they're getting too loud crying, we can go back to using that cat or mouse voice. Okay, but these are just some examples of ways we can use positive language to encourage positive behavior at home. Some more tips to make expectations clear for our kids. We want to tell them, again, what we want them to do instead of what not to do. We need to have clear, simple language and make sure that it's age appropriate, right? So my 5-year-old, I might be able to say, Joey, go get your cup and bring it to the table. And he might be able to do that if I'm talking about expectations, getting ready for dinner. But for a littler guy, they can't do that, right? So it might just be, if it's you have a younger, maybe a 2 or 3-year-old, hold this as you give them a cup and place it in their hand. Right? So think about modifying your expectations based on age appropriateness of your kiddo. All right, so what is reasonable expectations? Again, we want to always consider, like I said, age and developmental appropriateness, but we don't want to expect too much or too little. We have to find that middle ground, right? If we're giving expectations that are too hard, if I say to my son, get your cup, get your plate, get your silverware, go to the table, sit nicely, and wait for mom and dad. That's expecting too much of him, right? I'm kind of setting him up to fail, right? So we don't want to do that. If I just say, Joey, go sit at the table, right? He's going to get there. It's too little. He's going to get there before us because we're getting everything else ready. And then that also might lead to frustration. Well, I'm here, I'm waiting. Where are you, right? So we have to find a middle ground when setting expectations that are reasonable and realistic for our kids. So here are some examples of rules for home. Now, you might want to use visual supports for rules at home, or you might just want to use verbal language for your rules. But it is important to set them, to know what your expectations are of your kids and express that to them. So here is just some examples. Clean up after yourself, use an inside voice, ask before you get something that's not yours, and use your words to solve problems. So, to help kids be successful, we have to tell them what to do, but we also have to teach it. Now, I know that this is a challenge, right? Because kids are home now with their parents and caregivers, and we know you're not necessarily teachers, right? So all of a sudden, you're kind of put in this new role of teacher. So what does that mean? Here are 3 easy steps when you're trying to teach a rule or expectation or new routine. Show and tell. So you're going to give a verbal, you're going to tell them what you want them to do, but you're also going to show them. So when I started teaching Joey about bringing stuff to the table, I might show him and say, okay, but I want you to get your cup and bring it to the table. Here, watch. I'll walk over, grab the cup, right, and I'll bring it to the table. Okay? Show and tell. I told him and I showed him what to do. Okay? Then I say, okay, now you try. Right? So now he's going to practice getting his cup and bring it to the table. We're going to make sure we follow that up with reinforcement, right? Oh, great job, bud. I love how you went and got your cup. You used both hands and you brought it to the table. That's awesome. So showing and telling, practice, and encouragement and reinforcement will help to teach them what your rules and expectations at home are. You can also use pictures to teach your rules, okay? I talked about that a little bit. You might want to have a visual supports. Now, yes, you can use pre-made visual schedules. I actually linked some of these in the resources for visual schedules and rules. But you don't have to do something fancy to use a picture. Like it's shown here, this is just a kiddo cleaning up his trash, right? And mom snapped a picture, right? So now when you say, all right, it's time to clean up, remember, we're cleaning up, you can show them the picture, right? You're telling them that's your show, right? You went from the show of you're modeling it to now the show is a picture, right? And then you're gonna say, okay, time to clean up. Here you go, remember, this is what you gotta do, okay? And then they're gonna practice, okay? So post or tell them, model, practice, and praise it when it's done, okay? Using pictures doesn't have to be hard. And sometimes kids, it's a little added extra reinforcement where you're like, oh, stop right there, you're doing such a good job, let me take a picture. I love how you're doing that, right? That's a great way to do it. Or you can even use a sibling, right? If you have older siblings or even younger siblings, right? You can use them in the pictures, or maybe it's the adults, right? But it's about having a model, right? So either you're gonna show them live action, how to model the role or expectation, or you're gonna use a picture, either a picture of them, a real life picture from your home, or you can find pictures using the internet and some of the schedule resources that we linked for you. So why do we do this? Research tells us that kids are less likely to engage in problem behavior when they know what to do, how to do it, and what is expected, okay? So we really want to set kids up to be successful. We want to let them know what our expectations are. We want to teach them how to meet those rules and expectations. And we want to reinforce those positive rules and expectations. Okay, so I told you we were going to circle back to this a little bit. So this is catch your child being good. We want to make sure that we are using positive reinforcement, okay? So I know, listen, we have a million things going on at home right now, but what we can do is just catch your kids being good. When you see something that they're doing, say it, right? This example here, wow, you're being so careful keeping all those pieces on the table, right? Remember the kiddo is not doing anything, you know, above and beyond building with her blocks, but you want to catch them being good, right? This is especially important for kids that might have a lot of challenging behavior. You might say, you know, I feel like I'm redirecting them a lot. I don't know how to kind of use this 5-to-1 ratio and give them all this positive feedback. Just try this. Sometimes you have to just reinforce their calm bodies. It means they're just standing still for a moment. I love your nice, calm body right now, right? You're providing that verbal reinforcement just for the lack of challenging behavior, okay? So try your best. Catch them being good. So routines are really important for kids. And we were just talking about this, right, Nikita? Even routines for ourselves are important right now. It can really help to structure a day for an adult or a child. Now, don't stress yourself out over this, please. But a general routine is good to get into. Okay, and visual supports can help to teach these routines. I just have a couple examples up here of like a morning routine. Maybe it's you go to the bathroom, have breakfast, maybe you take medicine. They have grooming here, wash your face, brush teeth, and get dressed. Okay, And then there are specific visuals for teaching some ADLs to kids. And maybe you're going to teach how to brush teeth using a visual, or maybe potty training, right? You can use visual supports to help teach the routines. But just like we talked about before, you model, right? You show, and then you practice, okay? There's a note here that timers are also really great tools to help transition from one step to the next. I talked about this a little bit already, but timers are really good tools, whether it's transitioning from one step to the next, especially with that morning routine. It can be really helpful, especially for breakfast. Some kids kind of linger with eating, right? And if you want to make sure you're on a routine, maybe you just set a timer for 20 minutes. All right, bud, when that timer goes off, it's time to take your medicine, okay? Or whatever the next step in that routine might be. So establish a routine and incorporate visual supports. They're another great tool that can help to get everybody on track. Okay. Another strategy, we talked a little bit about this, is offering a choice. Okay, so choices are a great prevention strategy. Okay, within a routine, you can offer a choice. Maybe you can offer a choice of the steps in a routine, right? So here are some examples of different routines that maybe you can provide choices for. Getting dressed, okay? Maybe you can pick the outfit. Have a couple of choices. Do you want to wear shorts or pants today, right? Do you want to wear a red shirt or a blue shirt, okay? Maybe for bathing. My son, I know washing hair is a battle. Now it's even longer. It's even harder. But do you want to wash your body or your hair first? He's still doing both, right? But you ask the choice, and it makes it less demanding. So try to offer a choice within any one of these routines, whether it's dinner, play, cleanup, going to bed. It's another biggie, another hot topic, sleep, being at home. So maybe you give them a choice of activities in their bedtime routine, right? Do you want to read your story first or brush your teeth first? Okay, because all of these routines are opportunities to teach and to offer choices within them. This is just an example of some of those choices. Listen, and I propose at my house, we don't have a menu. So, you know, if I have French fries, mashed potatoes, and tater tots available, I'll give you that choice. But it might just be, do you want a baked potato or a mashed potato? I have a potato, right? But either way, you know, you're eating something. First then statements. This is another really great tool you can use within a routine, or even just to help kiddos that have a hard time with preferred and non-preferred activities. Okay, so here's an example of a first then statement. First, put on your shoes, then we can go outside. And that's a pretty logical one, right? But a first then is just a simple statement that tells your kid what to do in order to get what they want, right? The outcome they want is to go outside. So first, put on your shoes, and then we can go outside. Some other examples: first, pick up your toys, then snack, first get dressed, and you can play outside. You can also use visual supports for first thens. I do have some resources, some links at the end, and we can throw them in the chat if you guys want them. You can print these out at home and use them. Or like I said, you can always take a picture, okay? Take a picture of their shoes. Take a picture of what your outside looks like. First, we put on shoes, then we're going outside, okay? But we use visuals for first thens a lot at Easterseals in our classrooms. So here's the biggie. But we're parenting during a pandemic, right? So I'm giving you all these strategies, and I'm hoping that they might help. But this is the elephant in the room, right? But here is where we're at right now. Some days are better than others. Some minutes are better than others. I get that. Trust me. Give yourself some slack, some grace. Cut yourself a break. Don't try and do it all. Okay? The information that I gave you is just to help with some strategies that might encourage some more positive behavior at home. But I know there is a lot going on right now. So I wanted to share one more resource, and then we'll have some time for questions. It's important for us. We talked about filling our parent banks, our caregiver banks, staying calm and helping manage our own emotions during this time is really important. So this stuff, I really like this graphic. It's called Stay Calm, Connect, and Reflect. So if your child is maybe not meeting your expectations, if they're having a hard time, what can you do? Maybe take some deep breaths. I just sometimes have to close my eyes. And it sounds so cliche, but it helps. I close my eyes, I take a breath. Okay, you might want to use a positive affirmation like, I have patience. I love that. Because you need it, right? It's like in the moment you don't have it, but right? So you're gonna give yourself a positive affirmation, okay? Then you're gonna label your child's feelings. And this is something I've done with my son since he's been like 1 or 2, because I was learning about it in PBIS. And I'll say to him, even if he's upset, if he's having a tantrum, I see you're upset. I see you're angry. It's important to label our kids' feelings. We all have feelings. I have feelings that might be different than Nikita's feelings or Brianna's feelings. It doesn't mean we're wrong, right? Feelings can't be wrong. We might feel differently about something, and that's okay, right? We can reassure our kiddo, and if appropriate, maybe show them some affection if we're there yet. But catch them being good, right? So you're calm, you're gonna label their feelings, and then you're gonna maybe take a step back and look for an opportunity to catch them being good, okay? So that's the connect part. Stay calm, connect, and then reflect, okay? This is for us, not for them. Think about what they might have been feeling. What were they trying to communicate to you, okay? And how can you respond differently the next time the behavior occurs? It's just a reflection on our part, because our responses do affect our kiddos, positively and negatively. But like I said, you have to cut ourselves some slack. So take a deep breath, stay calm, connect, and reflect. Think about something that you like about your child. Try to turn it around for yourself if you're really struggling with trying to provide them any sort of positive feedback. It might help. Okay, Q&A break. We have like 7 minutes. So Nikita and Brianna, do we have some questions?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Danielle. We have a question from Kelly. She says, what about the older kids that are a little bit more resilient, who are harder to influence, harder to listen, and harder to focus with being on task? Maybe he or she has ADHD and ODD, where it's a job itself just to get dressed or just to play. Our clear expectations are set, clear rules are set, but the child is constantly opposing. What tools can I use for my son to listen, be respectful, not teach his younger siblings bad behaviors? And she says she's basically always shown love, set rules, and been consistent as well.
Thanks for that question. So yeah, older kiddos, especially ones that might have some opposition. What can you do? So one thing I would suggest is try to stay calm yourself. It's really easy with older kids to get in that power struggle, and that kind of feeds some of their behavior. So try your best to not engage in a power struggle, even if that means walking away and giving them space to de-escalate on their own, right? But when we talk about reinforcement for older kids, it gets tricky, okay? Because a lot of the times our positive reinforcement, our praise, the stuff we can provide to a little child, a younger child, isn't the same. So we have to find contingencies or reinforcers that are meaningful to them. What do they like? Is it screen time? Is it technology, right? Is it hangouts with their friends? And again, it might look different now because we're stuck at home, but we have to find what is reinforcing to them. And maybe they can work to earn something at the end of the week, right? Or maybe they're just earning their screen time. Especially with older kids, they want to be on their phones, they want to be on tablets or watching TV. Maybe you set up, you said you already have your rules and expectations, right? So maybe it's, but if for every half an hour you are meeting the house rules and expectations, you're going to get an extra 10 minutes of screen time, right? Is that going to be meaningful for him? So that's my suggestion. Find what's reinforcing and try to build and connect those rules and expectations to earning what is reinforcing to them. For some older kids, maybe it's an allowance, maybe it's money. But find what's reinforcing and connect them to your rules and expectations. And for the younger ones that are seeing it, just make sure you stay consistent. You're setting the same rules and expectations for them. Focus on them. If they're doing the right thing and he's not, say, oh, I don't know what the little ones' names are. Oh, Sally and Johnny, I love how you are doing your schoolwork. You are staying in your room. You make mommy so proud, right? So give them some of that positive attention and feedback when you're struggling for him. But also find the moments for the older one when you can give him the positive, right? Even if it's a moment, a fleeting moment where he's not yelling at you. That's what I like. I like when you are calm, when we can talk, right? So I hope some of those help. I know that kids with ADHD, it is hard right now, man. They are not moving. So another suggestion for any of you guys out there with kids that have ADHD or ADHD-like behaviors, get moving. Get them outside if you can. Embed movement activities or exercise into that daily routine. It can be really helpful for them to burn off some of that extra energy instead of letting it kind of manifest, and then it might come out as behavior. I hope that was helpful. Are there any other questions? Right. So I just wanted to share with you guys this one thing at a time, okay? If you can take one strategy from today and utilize it, that's one thing that you were doing differently today than you did yesterday, right? So one thing at a time. Like I said, it is a stressful time right now, so just try your best. Try to build those positive relationships with your kids. Set some routines and expectations up for them so that they can be successful.
Danielle, we do have one quick question. Rhonda says, I have a set of twins that I'm trying to focus on setting more focus during our visual teaching. How can she get them to focus during visual teaching? And she has twins.
So are they doing like telehealth, like on a computer, or just attention in general? Because they're two, you said, Nikita?
Yeah, no, I have a set of twins. She didn't say how old.
How old? Mm-hmm. So attention is really hard, especially when we're changing the expectation for kiddos that now they have to sit in front of a screen, right? And now they have to attend to what's happening. So I would suggest trying to engage them in what is going on. If it is some sort of online learning and they're having a hard time engaging with the therapist, maybe, I know for Easterseals and some of our younger kids, we're using a family coaching model. So maybe you can ask the therapist if they can give you strategies to engage with the twins, depending on how old they are. Another strategy for attention is, like I said, embedding those movement activities and making sure that we have appropriate expectations for attention, right? A 5-year-old, right, shouldn't be sitting for more than maybe 20-ish minutes. And even that is a big chunk of time, right? So have realistic expectations for how long you want them to sit and do an activity. and help them to be successful. Maybe, you know, you're going to start with, okay, you're going to be on for 10 minutes and you're going to end it positively. And then you're going to build on how long you expect them to attend for. But attention is really hard because you have to have those appropriate expectations and you have to find activities that are engaging for them. So I hope that helps. I know the screens are really hard right now. So I would encourage you guys, if you are doing some sort of telehealth, that most of the providers are using a family coaching model. So if your child is having a hard time engaging with the computer or the activity, maybe ask them if they can give you strategies to help you to engage with the child. Okay, so I did link a couple resources for you guys. We can throw these in the chat too. They're direct links to our Easterseals blog. A lot of our therapists have been throwing up great resources and videos. Our music therapists have some awesome videos up there. Our OTs and SLPs have resources. So that is a public blog you guys can check out. I also linked you guys to NCPMI COVID-19 pandemic resources. That last graphic, the Stay Calm, Connect, Reflect, came from there. They have a lot of great resources. Some additional resources include those links for first, then boards and visual schedules. We can throw those links up for you guys as well if you'd like them. So I'm going to turn it back to Christy. Here is her information. If you guys do have any questions about Delaware County LICC or early intervention services, you can email her for additional information. Thank you guys so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle, Naquetta, and Brianna. Thank you for everything. This was great information. I actually already did receive an email from somebody that was hoping that everything could be emailed over once we had all the information completed. So if anybody, like Danielle said, if you have any questions about the LICC, the presentation today, or EI in general, early intervention services, feel free to use this email address to reach out to me and I will get any information that you need over to you. But again, this presentation was hosted by the Delaware County Local Interagency Coordinating Council, and I'm so thankful for Danielle reaching out to me so that way we can get this information out to you because it is very much so needed. I know I had to go off of my video for a while because my 3-year-old was, you know, I was trying to embed these strategies on so thank you. But yeah, so thank you. I hope everybody is staying safe and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and feel free to email me with any questions, concerns, or any additional information.
All right. Thanks, Christy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.